On the other hand, since the Ayush department had kindly asked me to write a report before the 12th plan, talking exactly about what Dr. Khan just said, which is what have been the benefits that the systems have given, what are the gaps that remain, how can we address those gaps, and within that, what are our priorities? Since I had been given that task, I felt that this would be a unique opportunity for me to meet a multidisciplinary group and understand and maybe get a sense of whether all the work that I've been doing over the last 6 months, actually sitting in CCRUM, it was really Dr. Khalid Siddiqui who initiated it, and now Professor Jamil is giving me all the support. I have been touring the country. I have been interacting with just about everyone, educationists, practitioners, students, actually going to small clinics to watch what people are doing, talking to people from the integrated background, from the, you might say, the background of actually having the BAMS and post-graduation. I visited Jamnagar, I visited, of course, Mumbai and Bangalore, interacted by now with about 150 people who count in this sector. And at the end of the day, I think we are all talking about different worlds. And it'll never be possible for everyone to talk on one platform, and that must be understood. The interests of industry are very different from the interests of people who are in clinical research, although the two, very rightly, must work together, otherwise there'll be no product. And if there's no product, humanity is not going to benefit. It might benefit a few people who come, and that will continue, and you may preserve a system, but a larger world will be denied something. So that is one focus. The other focus is how do you regulate, how do you enforce, how do you lead to quality satisfaction, how do you give legitimacy to what you're doing. The old days are now over. The commodification has begun in a very large way. It cannot be wiped out because the days of the single healer and the single Hakim with his own little pharmacy and doing his lotions and potions and handing them to you personally are over, except of course there are a few people doing it, but on a scale it doesn't count anymore. And then you have this completely, you might say, going the Western way. We are graying. We have 7% of our population above the age of 60. In the next, by 2014, we will be having 14% of the population above 60. All these people, thanks to life expectancy, are going to be lived to their 80s, their 90s, may even cross 100. They will have all the problems of chronic diseases. In the meantime, a younger population is going to suffer from the stress-related, pollution-related, computer-related, so many things which are going to happen which did not happen 30 years ago. Eye strain, I mean, all the studies which are done by all the companies trying to market products, they're already pinpointing. You're going to have problems with this kind of syndrome of eye strain, syndrome of computer-related, you might say arthritis and all that. And then you have added to these problems the revival of a kind of non-communicable diseases are of course besetting us, the whole specter of cancers and hypertension, obesity, diabetes, I should have mentioned that. But now a new kind of a shift, which is chikungunya, dengue, things which were not really Indian diseases have suddenly surfaced in a very big way. Now chikungunya, the first sentence of Wikipedia is, chikungunya has no treatment, full stop. There is no mortality from chikungunya, okay, but you're going to suffer maybe for months, maybe for years, so says the internet. How can you lead a normal life if you're going to have pain every single day, and are you going to live on painkillers 3 times a day for the next so many months? You have to go to work, your child has to go to school. And Ayurveda, Unani, homeopathy have things. Now, how are you going to answer the question? If I were to give it to a family member, the first question I would want to know, never mind I've been in this department, never mind that I'm very impressed with some people in this department, and some of them are in this room and I regard them very, very highly. But I would like to know, what have you put into this? I would like to know who has said that it's not a substituted thing, it's not adulterated, that there are no great impurities beyond a point. I would also like to know what's it going to do to me in the long run? What's going to do to my kidney, to my liver? Who will answer these questions? I may take it once, but I will be very worried about taking it all the time. And yet, this is going to be the future. Why? Because allopathy has nothing to offer for a host of these conditions which are going to live with us. And if you have the kind of, I went to so many practitioners, I was impressed. They had, one product? They had something like the pharmacy consisted of 1,000 drugs, Unani, Ayurveda. And I wanted to see, is there a common denominator? Do they all do more or less the same thing, or each one is on his own trip? And do you know, 80% of them were doing exactly what the other man was doing. So it was not as though they were all doing something, completely on their own. They had OPDs. I'm not talking about poor people in health melas. I'm talking about people who were from the middle class, the upper middle class, the educated people. I taped them, I gave them my record, and I said, you just tell me, how did you come here? Who told you to come here? What did this doctor do with you? How do you feel? You please tell me. And I said, you don't have to say that this guy is great, because I'm not going to write a thing about him. I'm not going to mention his name. But you would be doing a great disservice if you fibbed to me. Please do tell me what happened to you. And story upon story, of course this is not research, this is not science, but it was so impressive. What these people had derived. Equally, foreigners who had come from Australia with all kinds of musculoskeletal problems, I said, what on earth, how did you from Australia even know that in this condition you could travel to India, you could get into a cortical hospital, you could get treated, and you're walking out. You came in a wheelchair, you're walking out of that hospital. And that woman was in tears, she was just crying, and she said, you don't know what I went through over here, how I was treated, what all was done to me, but I am a different person. I was on the verge of committing suicide. You see a mother with a child with cerebral palsy, head hanging like that. No mother is going to like the idea of seeing that child. He's not going to live very long, but for as long as he lives, do you want a child with his head hanging on his chest? That boy who had his head held high, he was in a wheelchair, he was mentally challenged. And she said, entirely on her own, National Institute of Ayurveda, I brought my child here. He's able to hold his head high, he's able to lift things, he can hold my hand. It means so much to me. Now, these are the kinds of success stories which, without having to go, and I'm not putting down what CRISM is doing, I'm coming very shortly to what CRISM is doing, but I'm saying first let's put our house in order. In my report, I'm going to capture a lot of things which are happening regardless of what the government is doing. They are happening on their own. It's a sustainable way of going on with your Ayurvedic lifestyle. Maybe it has been promoted by the Cortical School, maybe by BHU, maybe by Jamnagar, maybe by people who on their own, Dhutpapeshwar, because they're such an old industry. I don't know who these people are, but it has been kept alive. And there is a common denominator, thankfully. It is not something haphazard. These are people who know what they're doing, and they're doing much the same thing, all of them, and that 1,000 range of medicines which they use, classical medicine, I'm not now talking about the patent proprietary. Some have stocked a whole lot of patent proprietary. They said, we buy it from this Aushadhi, we're very happy with the produce of this Aushadhi, and we dispense only the medicine from this because it's easy to keep an inventory and replenish our stocks. Now, if that world is going on, people want to know more about it. They want a website which answers questions. They want their FAQs answered. They want to know who are these practitioners, what are their credentials, what is the work they're doing, what is it that it is good for. And it is government's responsibility to certify, to legitimize, to be able to sift the chaff from the grain, to say this is rubbish, and to stand by it that we don't stand by rubbish. There's a lot of education going on which is utter and complete rubbish. There's a lot of claims going on. There's a lot of, oh, I cleared this case, his man was dying, but I brought him back to life, and today he's 60 years old. Fine. There are very few people like Balendra Prakash who actually put it down in writing, and he's got published papers. It's not impossible. Why do we feel happy and satisfied with making these tall claims and saying, oh, this happened to my grandmother, and now she's lived to be 90, she was told by the doctor she would be dead by 60. These stories don't mean a thing in the world of science. They're all emotion. But what will happen is, if you do a Balendra Prakash on that, and you do it with the kind of, sort of you might say, solid work, not driven by emotion and rhetoric, you will reach somewhere, but not if you're driven by emotion, not if you're driven by, oh, if the allopaths are doing this, why can't we do it? Oh, we were taught surgery, so we will do surgery, we will do anesthetics. People will lose faith in you as an Ayurvedic or a Unani person. Not that you should not know about modern science, not that you should not know about modern diagnostics, you do need to know. But I think that a time has come when this world within India, I'm coming to the world abroad separately. The world within India, we have a lot. I'm impressed by that, and I've had the opportunities to travel and see for myself. I have nothing to gain by saying this world is doing some good work, because I don't have a constituency. I'm not fighting for any parliament seat that I want Veds and Hakims to vote for me. And I'm a very tough person to talk to. All of you know that. I can be quite nasty. And when I see rubbish, I say that it's rubbish. But when I see something good, I do want to capture it in my report. I want to tell the government, capitalize on this, build this up, and completely put down this nonsense which has been also perpetrated. Now, that is the world I want to address in the area of research. And one thing that I want to say about research, and I've floated a paper which I have sent to a lot of you, please comment, why can't we have, and this idea is not mine, this idea of Secretary Science and Technology, Dr. Ramasamy. I pestered him, I said, you tell me all the work that you have done under, I mean, I talked to CSIR, DBT, DST, ICMR, and then I talked finally to, of course, CCRA, CCRUM, and I said, look, I'm not interested in the great leads that you found and all the clinical trials that reached phase 3 and went put. I want to know what benefits did you give the public? And I don't have the time to tell you what benefits. It's a very depressing story. You don't have products. You don't have anything to say, I did this by way of research. But on the other hand, look at the irony of it. CCRUM sits and produces a whole lot of coded drugs. Say, till we get a patent, we're not allowed to give them out. They remain coded. We will give them to patients in health melas. We will give them to in our institutions. So I asked them, in 30 years, how many people have been, something like lakhs of people have been given this medicine. The law says you can give the medicine. The practitioner can change the medicine within the classical repertoire. You are giving it merrily in health melas and in your own institutes, and you will not share it with the wider public. After all, government funded you to do it. I think it's high time that you brought this into the public arena. If people want something for psoriasis and eczema and you have it, and all your annual reports year after year are saying that you have it, why are you restricting it to just tens of thousands? Why not to lakhs and millions? So I'm going to make recommendations which are going to be a little out of the, I think the scientific advisory bodies of the CCRAS, CCRUM at any rate will have to really relook at the way they have been guiding the research, because ultimately what is the product you have given? And at least if you have a product, bring it into the open. But look at what DBT, DST, ICMR, at the end of it all, they could not give a drug which industry touched. They produced Vijayasar for diabetes. It was not touched by industry. So where does that leave us? Now my solution is, and this is Dr. Ramasamy's suggestion, not mine, you just say in any allopathic hospital after deciding the conditions, let it be diabetes, let it be arthritis, you may opt for Unani treatment, which will be paid for by Department of Ayush. There is an inclusion criteria, there's an exclusion criteria. If you qualify, we will take you on. Take those people on, and there'll be enough people who will come forward. The law allows you to prescribe your medicines. You don't have to go and wave a flag of standardization and pharmacopoeias and all that. That is the job of the government to administer that. If the government is not administering it, if the drug controllers are not administering it, the licensing authorities are not administering, somebody will pay a price somewhere. There'll be a scam and it'll come in the open. Don't worry about that. There is already a pharmacopoeia. Somebody is supposed to enforce it. But give that medicine, see if there is an improvement. If there is an improvement, and have a monitoring committee, multidisciplinary at one level, and have a superior body at another level. No question of bias, no question of lack of objectivity. I'm sure the results will come out. Maybe you will come out with flying colors, maybe you will fail. It doesn't matter. In the world of science, it doesn't matter. We don't have to pretend to anybody. But if you are willing to do this kind of research, I think it may be called an observational study, it may be called anything. But the Australian women and the women from wherever, US and all, who had come to Kottakkal, certainly they would be absolutely thrilled to know that these studies did result in this. It may not result in FDA approval, I don't expect it will. And coming to what CRISM has been doing, I think I really congratulate the secretary at that time for having had the vision to have had this kind of collaboration. And it's good that you are now reaching into areas where you're grappling with real issues. It's no longer just one of those talk shops. But I do feel that CRISM was also supposed to, among its terms of reference, do 3 or 4 things, which could easily be done today. Remove the myths and misconceptions about Ayurvedic and Unani medicine. So the things that I said today, the things that Dr. Sharma said today, the things that were said by Dr. Asim Khan from Jamia Hamdard, this should be known to a wider world. They need not accept it, but we need to tell people. This is our system, we have it coded, it is completely codified, it is something which is licensed, it's in our Drugs and Cosmetics Act, it's a live system, and it's a huge, huge system. It's not tiny little fellows working here and there. This needs to be told. The myths and misconceptions do need to be removed. Secondly, we were supposed to do, I think, some collaborative preparation of joint publications. Maybe we don't need publications. What you really need, perhaps, is absolutely a huge metadatabase, a virtual resource center, which can be accessed by anyone in the world. You go to psoriasis, then you go to Ayurveda, and from Ayurveda you go to the drugs that are prescribed. You go to the ashwagandha, you click ashwagandha, you go to what are the properties of ashwagandha, what are the contraindications, all that. All this should be there. So a modern mind feels satisfied that, okay, if I get into this Ayurveda business and this Unani business, I know where I'm leading, it's going somewhere. Secondly, you do need a list of institutions, people, places, research work, all this on a website. Dr. Baghel in Jamnagar has done research, which I'm writing about in my report. 7,000 theses were produced. Out of them, 1,200 only dealt with clinical research. The rest were all kinds of other research, drug and literary and all that. But at the end of the day, are we publishing our research thesis? Are the students' researches being taken forward? Is anything coming out of that? No. I think the research at the academic end is very, very poor quality. The students don't seem to care whether they produce anything. Nobody seems to force them to get it published. So I think there is another whole area over there waiting to be tapped.